Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar. I'm Christine, Head of Customer Service at Meditech, and I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to introduce you to our new partner, AccessPay. The aim of this webinar is to inform you about the AccessPay integration, which is now offered alongside your priority ERP from Meditech. The integration should allow you to work in a much more seamless way with your banks and financial institutions, whether that be to help you to easier handle payments or to review your bank position and pull statements directly into the ERP. If you have any questions, then please fill in the Q&A box on the webinar page. We'll be happy to answer any questions should time allow. So now I should introduce James Stockton and Tom Livick from AccessPay, who are much better experienced to advise and demonstrate what you can do with such an integration. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Christine, and good morning, everybody, on a very windy Thursday morning. Much appreciated, and thank you again for allowing AccessPay to introduce our solution to your current and potential customers. As Christine mentioned, my name is James Stockton. I'm Head of Partner and Market Development here at AccessPay, and I run the partner channel where Meditech sits. And I'm introduced with Tom Livick, who's Head of Enterprise Sales, and Tom has got the great task today of running through the webinar of the AccessPay solution. As Christine mentioned, this is a very interactive session this morning, so if you do have any questions, please drop them in the box, and what we'll do is, as time prevails, we'll do our best to answer as many as we can. So the aim of today, as Christine mentioned, is to give a high-level overview of AccessPay and a run-through of our automated payment solution. Tom, can you move on to the next slide, please? I'm going to try not to sound like Boris Johnson today as well, by the way. So as you can see, AccessPay, we provide a secure digital connection to over 16,000 banks and payment schemes worldwide. The platform that my colleague Tom will run through for you is used by thousands of companies, banks, ERP and FinTechs to automate their payment, collections and treasury processes. This ultimately helps free up finance functions to perform other tasks. You can see here it is quite a very busy slide, but what we tried to do is articulate exactly what we do from top to bottom. It doesn't really matter around payments and collections what you're doing. You can see here BACS, you've got CHAPS, you've got SEPA, SWIFT, real-time payments. But one of the massive benefits of AccessPay is we're always 6 to 12 months ahead of the curve from a technology angle. So it doesn't matter what's coming around, whether it's APIs, whether it's pay and trace, whether it's open finance, whether it's request to pay, we're always making sure that our potential and our existing customer base always have the ability to process that particular technology through the AccessPay platform. 16,000 banks is a very broad statement, but because AccessPay are on the SWIFT network, it does mean that we can connect to the vast majority of the global banks that are out there. Obviously, the slide at the bottom that you can see there, we've just tried to encapsulate a number of the banks that we tend to work with on a day-to-day basis. The likes of Barclays, the likes of Santander, the likes of RBS, and the likes of JP Morgan. If there are any banks that are not on that list, for example, or if you do work with any weird and wonderful banks, you can always get in touch with either Christine or myself following this call, and we can talk on how we can connect to it. Tom, can you jump on the next slide, please? One of the main reasons and one of the unique selling points of AccessPay is the value that we bring to our customers. The biggest thing that differentiates us in the market is faster implementation times. Historically, within the world of payments, companies tend to have to wait months or sometimes even years for solutions to be implemented. AccessPay is majorly going against the grain here, moving to the fact that we can typically have a solution implemented in a matter of weeks. That's a very much a secure, fast integration. Not only do we integrate into Priority, but we do integrate into any ERP or TMS as well. So if there are a number of customers that are on the call today that do have a treasury management system like a Belling or a Kyriba or any other small legacy ERP systems, we can connect to them. But here we're here to talk about Priority. And just to finish really, because I'm not going to run through this slide verbatim, scalability for growth is a really, really important thing to talk about here. The number of customers that have come to AccessPay on day one to how they look 3-4 years later is completely different. As corporates grow, as the world changes, especially in these challenging times, AccessPay is at the forefront to allow you to add, to take away certain modules and certain ways to process payments and to receive cash management as best as we possibly can. And the most important thing to talk about today, and just to finish off before I hand over to Tom, is a single platform. So if I refer back to the second slide, all the payment types that were mentioned, or the ERP systems, especially Priority, we process all these actual payments and the cash management through the same platform. There's no need to log into a different platform. There's no need to go into a separate tab onto an Internet Explorer. It's all through the same platform. And first and last but not least, it's software as a service. So again, there's no hardware to actually implement within businesses either. You can access this solution no matter where you are in the world. Tom, anything to add before we jump straight into the user case?
Oh, thanks, James. That's a really good overview of what we do. So if I can now move to some example customers that we've been working with. The first one is going to be, that we'll come on to in a second, is our friends at ITV. But just before that, I wanted to give you an overview of who we are as a company. And James has hinted at some of these things that you can see on the slide now. So we have over 1,000 customers. And they're in different locations around the world using the platform for different reasons. About 200+ million individual transactions were submitted last year, which account to something like $1 trillion were passed through the platform. So this is a sizable platform that's being used by large organizations and small organizations alike. As I mentioned, the first one is that we wanted to talk about was ITV. ITV came to AccessPay in 2015. ITV was moving from being a commercial broadcaster that we all know and love to being the content provider that we actually see today. And their revenue, their revenue streams were going to change. And also their business was fundamentally shifting from a traditional commercial broadcaster to that being a content provider. And so they needed a different platform. And we actually replaced one of our competitors to provide them with a complete global solution. I was quite surprised. I very much see ITV as a UK company, but it's quite interesting that their shift to being a content provider means that they have studios in Hollywood, in Germany, in Holland. Obviously, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here is well known and loved in the UK, so obviously they have studios in Australia as well. And that was a significant change for them, and we helped them move from to transition from being that commercial broadcaster to a content provider. I'll move on to the next one. The next brand is maybe not quite as well known as ITV. So the company is NSG, or Nippon Sheet Glass, and as the name implies, they're actually a Japanese glass manufacturer, better known in the UK as Pilkington, and NSG acquired Pilkington Glass in 2006. They originally came to us as a point solution for their treasury team, and they wanted to connect to some of their banks, replacing a manual process that they had. But that actually then quite quickly moved to becoming a requirement, not just for treasury, but to implement a payment factory across the globe. And we were able to, because we were already providing a solution for them connecting to some of their banks, initially for treasury, we were very easily able to enable that and change that solution to a payment factory solution connecting to an SAP solution. In this case, it was S4HANA, and that was completed in less than 3 months. James mentioned during his introduction that AccessPay is able to connect to multiple schemes using a single platform. And you may have seen with ITV, but also with NSG, we're able to enable BACS payments as well as international payments in the same platform. And AccessPay is actually very unique in this, in that there's no other organization out there who is able to connect to both BACS, international payments, SEPA, ACH, you name it, we can connect to that bank via that payment scheme using the same platform, using the same integrated platform. Okay, so the final customer I wanted just to highlight was Primark. Primark came to us, as it says in the middle of this slide, in 2016 because they had a particular issue with one bank, and that bank was removing a payment type that it offered, which meant that their ERP system would no longer be able to submit transactions because they weren't able to change the file format from their legacy ERP. And they needed a piece of middleware that would accept the legacy file format, but still be able to deliver it to the bank. And so we helped Primark with that whole integration for that particular bank and that legacy ERP system. Jump forward 5 years, I guess, to where we are now. We are now processing Primark's payroll, supplier payments, treasury, accounts payable on a global basis. Primark are in 13 different countries, and AccessPay has enabled them to carry out complete automation across all countries, all payroll types, accounts payable, and those treasury functions. Okay, so on this final slide, really wanted to move on. If we don't have any questions yet, James?
No questions yet, no, Tom.
Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll stop the slides at this point, and I'll jump into a demonstration and show two of the AccessPay applications. The first application is for payments, and we'll show how the payment process works. And the second application is for cash management. The time we have means that really being rather than calling this demonstration, it's more like a show and tell, if I can use that expression. So really a demonstration of AccessPay takes somewhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. So probably in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll spend 10 minutes on the payment application and then 10 minutes on cash management. And then we'll have time at the end for any questions if there are any at that stage. Looks like we have one question, James.
We do. So what format do you need the files to be to work in AccessPay?
That's a great question. Thank you. So we talk about AccessPay being bank and file agnostic. And what that actually means is from a priority point of view, priority doesn't need to generate the file in the right format for the bank. So for example, priority could be generating a CSV file or a text file, if you like, and then AccessPay would receive that file in that format and generate the format that's actually required by the bank. So one of our key strengths is that the ERP system doesn't need to match the bank's requirements. Maybe if there's only one bank that was being connected, then that's maybe not so much of an issue. But what we see is particularly where there is multiple banks being connected, and we know that all banks are different, even though we like to think that all banks are the same. In reality, we know that the banks are different, and each bank may want a different file format. So let's say we had 3 banks, there could be 3 file formats required. And in this case, priority only needs to generate one file format in that CSV, if you like, that CSV format. AccessPay will then transform that format into the bank file that's required, and actually we'll do that on 3 separate, in this case, 3 separate types of formats if those 3 banks require the formats in 3 different versions. I hope that answers the question. Okay. Great. So bear with me a second because I need to just come out from the slides and log into the system. Great. So the gods are with us, which is always a good sign. I'll just need to sign out and sign back in again. So the first point to note, James, can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, I can see it, Tom.
Yes, we can.
Great. So the first point to note is that I'm using Google Chrome. We support all web browsers, but the point here is this is a true web application. Our customers don't need any hardware or software downloaded or installed within their network. This is a true web-based application. This demo system that I've logged into, you'll see at the top, it's HTTPS, so it's a very secure application. And actually the URL is customized for the customer. So in this case, it says demoak.accesspay.com, but for Primark, this could be primark.accesspay.com if you like. The second thing you'll see is that the control access into the application is username password controlled. And in particular, the username is a named user. So in other words, we are controlling who logs into the system, and we're able to maintain and manage who has that access. James, looks like we might have another question.
We do, we have two. So it's good because it comes on to the actual demo itself. So the first one is, how is the CSV transferred between the two systems? Or is it just saved in a folder on the priority server?
Yeah, so again, thank you for that. So there's actually three ways the files can get into AccessPay, and the timing of that is perfect because I'm going to show you one of the ways. In a demonstration environment, it's actually difficult to show the automation that we always shout about, because ultimately AccessPay is all about replacing bank portals and automating the process from priority to the bank and streamlining that process as much as we can. So the first way to get that CSV file into AccessPay is using Secure File Transfer Protocol, so SFTP. Currently, probably 90% of our customers use SFTP as a way of getting the file into AccessPay. We provide the SFTP service, and there would be an SFTP client required within the customer side, which I'm sure Meditech would arrange how that file is then moved from priority into AccessPay.
Brilliant, thanks Tom. They're flying in now, but I'm going to try and ask them to you whilst you're doing it. But this one is quite prompt because of what you're about to do. So one of the next questions is, do you support dual factor authentication, for example, Duo?
Oh, whoever's been doing their research on AccessPay is brilliant. So absolutely. So one of our shouting points, one of our key differentiators as a vendor, is that we've moved from two-factor authentication this time last year to now using multi-factor authentication using Duo, and you're actually just about to see that as I log into the system. James, is there any? Looks like there might be one more question.
There is, yeah. So whilst you're logging in, I'll ask the question. So is the process seamless into the bank via an API or equivalent, or does it require file export? One of our benefits will be to satisfy internal audit requirements around secure payment sign-offs. There are anti-CSV exports as they can be manipulated.
Yeah, definitely. So the export out of AccessPay, so if you think about what we've been talking about and James's slide, where we had the incoming file from priority and the outgoing file to the banks, that outgoing connection is secured via a number of different means. So I'll just take a couple of them to highlight the point. So with Baxtel IP, we're connected to the BAX scheme using Baxtel IP. And if you're familiar with Baxtel IP, only certain vendors are connected to the scheme using this channel, and it is an encrypted channel, and it's highly secure. It's actually we actually have to become accredited by BAX, and we have to be that connection is actually secured by VocaLink and the BAX scheme. So there is no way that that channel can be intercepted because it's controlled by BAX. Okay, so that's the BAX process. Let's think about a file that's not going to the BAX scheme but directly to the bank, and potentially using a direct connection. In that case, the process we use for connection is governed by the bank, and it is a point-to-point connection. So it's a peer-to-peer connection, and it's, as I say, it's actually secured by the bank. They will use a number of different encryption algorithms to make sure that that link is highly secure, and we are monitored by the bank for providing the connection the right way. Otherwise, effectively, the connection is broken. Hopefully, that answers those two questions. I'm just conscious of the time.
Yeah, carry on, Tom. No questions at the moment.
So hopefully you saw me log into the AccessPay application using Duo. So that was as I mentioned, that's a major benefit for the AccessPay application, which we now offer multi-factor authentication. Having logged into the system, I'll give you a quick tour of AccessPay and then come back to this main submission screen. So going across the top, you'll see we've got submissions, which is where we are now, dashboards, which is a management screen, reports. So there are a number of different payment reports, such as the BACS reports that can be downloaded. Bank accounts being set up in the system. Detect is a fraud control module that we have inside AccessPay to monitor these payments that are going out of AccessPay. Administration, so there's an admin tab. The administrators can control what's happening inside AccessPay. And then over on the far right-hand side is my name icon. And if I click on my name icon, you'll see a couple of things. You'll see I can click on my user profile, so it tells me my user profile. But more importantly, it shows me my notifications. So these are the notifications I'm going to receive from AccessPay as these payment files go through the system. We talk about AccessPay having workflows, and in this demo system, we have probably about 10 different workflows configured. But the point being, each one of these steps that you can see down on the left-hand side, the user would receive an email notification of that particular step. So I know that, well, firstly, if I had all these configured, my inbox would be full of AccessPay emails. But joking aside, I can set up my own configuration of which ones I want to be notified of and which ones I don't, just by simply clicking and selecting what I do and what I don't want. The other thing I can do is I can see audit. So AccessPay introduced the audit capability in the system. Given time, I haven't got the time to go through this in too much detail, but just wanted to show you the audit capability, which can save you significant time when it comes to audit review. How are you managing your payments? There's a number of different reports that can be downloaded, such as the file journey as it goes through the platform, who's accessing the system, who's using the system, any admin changes. So if administrators are making changes, we're also going to track those. So there are a number of different reports that the user can export from the system. Right, so moving back to the admin tab. The admin tab is, again, it's a session in its own right, and I again don't have too much time to go through this specifically, but just to highlight a couple of points. AccessPay is very different from our other competitors out there, because although we have the users provisioned in the system and we license based on a user basis, the administrator can go in and make those users active or inactive, and especially during the pandemic. So looking at Jack here, I could go in and say, oh, well, Jack's not coming into the office today, so I can go into Jack's profile and actually make him inactive. So I'm going to switch his details back to being active again. But the point is that I can very easily manage the licenses within the system. This allows our customers to have actually more users provisioned in the system than they're licensed for, just by simply activating and deactivating them. James, looks like we have another question.
Yeah, it's just in regards to an element of the commercials of AccessPay. So somebody's asked, what is the cost per user?
Yeah, so we charge £200 per user as an annual fee, and we don't change that fee depending on the user type. So if you'll see, if I click on roles and permissions, we've got a whole bunch of different types of users, administrators, full access, uploaders, and we don't change the commercials based on what type of user they are, because ultimately we want our customers to be able to have the flexibility to go into the system and change their users as they need to. Okay, I'm just conscious of the time, so I'll move on to the next tab over, which is Detect. So Detect, as I mentioned, is our fraud control mechanism, and there are a number of different rules that can be created in the system to alert you of a particular payment that's just been received. These rules that have been set up in the system, in this demo system. The first one is the amount threshold. So in other words, if a payment goes above a certain amount, the user will be notified by email that that's happened. If you're trying to pay somebody that you haven't paid before, then again, the user will be notified by email. If there is a duplicate third party, so it looks like you're paying somebody twice, again, you'd be notified. And then finally, the maximum number of transactions in the file. James, looks like we have another question.
Yep, we do. Are there any costs attached to the service, such as implementation?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Are there any costs attached to the service, such as implementation?
Yeah, so typically, as a rule of thumb, we work on the basis that there will be some implementation costs based on the fact we have to work with the banks. We'll have to also understand your requirements in a bit more detail, and typically that they are 20% of the annual subscription. So our commercial model is there's an annual fee and there is an implementation fee, and typically the implementation fee is around about 20% of the annual fee. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, we've got about just under 10 minutes left, Tom, if it goes over to 40 minutes. So
I'll finish this one in 4 minutes and then we'll move on to just spend just a few minutes on the cash management application. Yeah. So I'm going to jump straight to, given the time, I'm going to jump straight to the submissions. Obviously, we're happy to do a full demonstration for anybody that's interested at a later date. So on the submission screens, this is where the files, the payment files, are entering into AccessPay. And as we talked about...
Sorry, Tom, it's Christine. I just wanted to let everybody know that what Meditech has done in this example is we've written a button that you can click in priority. I don't think Tom's going to have the time to show that today. But basically, there's a button that you press that will send the file to AccessPay, and then it would be picked up in this screen. Tom, that's where I think we are, isn't it, in there?
Yeah, thanks, Christine. Yeah, so
just to make it clear.
So there are three options of getting the files into AccessPay. So there's that automated process that Christine just talked about. The second approach is that the files can be uploaded automatically, or uploaded manually, should I say, which is what I'm just going to show you. And also there is a third way, which is SFTP as a third option if that's required. So a number of different ways that these files can get into the system. You'll see that I can filter by time and submission, and also you'll see going across the top a number of different header information about the file that we've received. And this first one, this Meditech file from the Meditech priority file, is a CSV file that's been uploaded, and it's got 100 transactions, and the credit amount of those 100 transactions is £154,700. It's telling me to review the validation, and it's given me a status icon. So this upload capability, I'll just show you that briefly. So I basically go to upload, I find the file, and as Christine mentioned, this isn't the process you would normally follow. Normally it'd be a click to get the file into AccessPay. I select the file from my locally from where I can see them. This is a Meditech priority file I'm going to upload, and it comes into the system automatically. You'll see the time date stamp March the 11th, 10:29. Means I've got a minute left of this demo, so I better get a move on. And if I click on the red icon, it takes me to the next level down. So in the submission screen, there are two levels, the file level and transaction level. It tells me where this file is on its journey, so it's only just been imported, and it gives me some header information about the file. But actually, if I scroll down, I can see all the individual transactions themselves. Every single transaction, I can see the detail. I can move on if I wish. I can proceed. It's telling me now to review the validation, and then eventually we'll get to the approval stage, which will allow me to actually approve the file before it's being released. This file is actually a detect, so it's actually noted a problem with the file, and it's telling me that actually I've got a red warning because actually this value exceeds the amount expected. So I've got a specific threshold on the amount that can be loaded. Okay, and if I just click on proceed, you'll see that we'll get to the point where actually the file is ready to be approved and can be delivered to the bank. So I'm going to stop the demo at this stage for the payment side, just conscious of the time, and swap now. If we don't have any questions, I'm going to swap to our cash management tool. I'll just pause for a second just to see if there's any questions.
No questions, Tom. If it crops up, I'll jump straight on it.
I suppose just to mention the key points there are that you're doing one process in priority, and then the rest of the processing you're doing in your in this AccessPay application for all of your banks.
Thanks, Christine. And that's the key point really, is you don't have to log into your bank portals to then process. Once AccessPay has released the payment, you no longer need to log into your bank portals to process those payments. And where we can, would I just show you all those steps I went through? In reality, you won't need those steps. The files can go straight through. We ultimately, the point we want to get through to is straight through processing from priority to your banks.
Just while you load up the cash management platform, Tom, another question's come in. Do you work with Amazon Pay and PayPal?
That's a good question. So PayPal's an interesting one. They've just, if you're familiar with open banking, so PayPal have now signed up to open banking APIs. And I haven't talked about how we can connect to the banks outside of the usual suspect banks like the Barclays, the NatWest of this world. But actually, we are going to be able to connect to PayPal via open banking APIs. So that's probably something that's going to come later this year. But yes, there will be a mechanism for connecting out from AccessPay to PayPal.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so if next couple of minutes, so we just switch your minds to cash management. So rather than thinking about payments, we now focus on statements. So now the process is the bank is now sending a statement information, can take a number of different forms, MT940s, MT942s, if you're familiar with the end of day or intraday statement format. We receive those into AccessPay, and actually we can automatically deliver that information out of AccessPay to priority. James, looks like we might have a question.
We do, yeah. Can we create and adjust the file mapping from the original CSV to the bank format, or is that always done by AccessPay?
Either is the question. Obviously, we can take either a bank ready format. If you're able to output the bank ready format from priority and you're able to map that within the ERP system, then that's fantastic. If not, then as we talked about, we'll receive the CSV and we'll do the mapping to get the bank ready format.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so on the statement side, we've only got a couple of minutes left, so I'm just going to touch on a couple of areas just to give you a flavour of how this AccessPay cash management application works. The first thing you can see is we've landed on the dashboard page for cash management, and this is showing the balances across all bank accounts and all banks in the UK. So I can see that my net balance is showing at 22 million, and I've got a long and short balance. And if I had operations in other parts of the world, so in this demo system, we've got also bank accounts loaded in North America, I can simply hover over and see the total cash position of my accounts in those countries. Just a bit more detail on that. So, oh, sorry, timed me out, of course, typical demos. So just bear with me a second. So if I click on the balances screen, what this is showing is that I can drill down on my balances by currency, by bank, by country, by something called a tag, and a legal entity. So I can drill down on all of my bank accounts, all of my banks, based on these 5 factors. Tags is something where you could group accounts together. So for example, if you were pooling accounts, or if you had client money accounts or office money accounts, they could all be pulled together or grouped together into one tag. What I wanted to show you was the ability to just drill down from this high level where we are now. So we're currently at a currency level, and it's showing me currency across those two currencies that I've got loaded in the system. But actually I can then drill down by bank. And ultimately what's going to happen is we're going to go from HSBC, which is the bank I've just clicked on, and actually we're going to go all the way down to a level where I can see the individual transactions. So now I've clicked through, these are the individual bank accounts that are loaded. They're showing me the opening, close, current balance, the future value, and the forecasted balance. And actually I can then click down a step further and get to something that looks like a statement. And you'll see these are the actual individual transactions in this particular statement for this bank account. And if there's any additional information that's been included by the bank, I can get that additional information as well. This information can be, as a user, I can export out of AccessPay using these 2 icons, but also this statement data is automatically generated using a report capability in the system. Given the time of where we are now, I haven't got time to show you this, but the report capability, it allows me to export those statement reports and schedule those in an automated way. James, Christine, I'm going to stop the demo there given the time, and see if there's any questions and any other comments.
Thanks, Tom, and to everybody who's still on the call. As Tom mentioned earlier on in the demo, normally to run through the cash management platform and the unified payments platform can take anything to 45 to 60 minutes. So it's been a very quick whistle-stop tour through the actual solution itself, and we're more than happy to set up calls following this session today to run through. We have got one question that's just come in, Tom, just to finish. Can statements be imported automatically into the ERP system?
Yes, so that was what I was hinting at, talking about that report that's exported out of AccessPay. So absolutely, we can send the data in either the bank ready, a bit like we do with payments. It's the same with statements. So we can either send the bank generated MT940 statement, or we can actually generate a CSV version of that and send either the bank generated MT940 or CSV to the ERP.
And is there no transaction volume cost on top of the per user license cost?
No, one of our key differentiators as a business is we don't charge on a transaction basis.
Fantastic, thank you. There's no more questions at the moment. Christine, hand over back to you to close.
Yes, so I hope you all found that interesting. I certainly did. It's nice to actually see the tool in action. If you have any interest, if you want to talk to us about it, don't hesitate to contact me. We'll do a follow-up email after this just to send out some details and information. And I just hope you found it useful. Have a really good day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Bye. Bye.